listening to the Becoming More Me podcast with me, Theresa Lear Levine. You're already enough. But if you're anything like me, you thrive when you're stretching and developing yourself, creating more of the person you feel called to be. This podcast is here to inspire and support you. Let's release the negative, reinforce the positive, and elevate our vibe together as we tap into our limitless potential to transform and grow. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Becoming More Me. My guest today is Naketa Ren Thigpen. Now, Naketa and I met through our booking agents, and I'm so glad that we crossed paths because we've taken the time to get to know each other, and I absolutely adore her, and we always have a blast when we start talking. So let me tell you guys a little bit about her so that you can begin to understand what she brings to the show today a little bit better before we really dive in. So Naketa's mission is to build stronger families that leave new multi-generational imprints. Now, in this case, the word leave is actually an acronym that she uses for the ripples of love, empathy, adventure, victory, and edification that the families she touches create from their wholeness. So cool. And Naketa is creating ripples of her own and raising the bar in personal development industry. So formerly trained as a licensed clinical social worker, she's combined her skills as a psychotherapist, trauma specialist, sexologist, and relationship therapist with strategically infused tenets of coaching. And she is the #1 balance and relationship advisor in the world. So as CEO of ThigPro Balance and Relationship Management Institute, this gorgeous soul has revolutionized how to heal traumas while balancing work life and love. She activates power couples, married women entrepreneurs, and a few bold leaders who are ready to recalibrate and own their right to be intentionally selfish as they amplify relationship intimacy and live fully. And I know that can feel like a tall order if you are not yet recalibrated in that way. So I think it's time that we meet the amazing Naketa Ren Thigpen and dive in. Welcome. How you doing today?
Oh my God. Theresa, first of all, I need you with me everywhere for every introduction. Let me say that. I don't think, and I've had some really good introductions. No one has landed it like that. So thank you. I am magical today.
Good. I'm glad you're magical every day, which is, I just, people should know that. That's a typical response if you're talking to Naketa, and it's great because she means it every time. And I love it. So that's a lot going on there. And I guess, after a successful, you stated that after a successful career helping families push through trials caused by trauma, this was like in your bio information that you shared with me, that people had lost confidence and communication challenges impacting intimacy within their relationship. You broke barriers and glass ceilings when you decided to break free from what you called outdated expectations and binding patriarchal definitions that limited the ability to self-actualize. Now that's a lot. Can you tell me more about what that part of your journey and what those expectations and definitions and limitations were for you?
Yeah. And it really does come back to the word selfish, right? Like people have sometimes the same as I did, which I don't judge them for, a visceral reaction when I'm like, yeah, girl, you're selfish. And they're like, oh, no, I'm not. And I mean it in my redefined way. So a little context for people who are thinking like, oh, I would never use that word. It's something that totally doesn't describe my altruism, my philanthropy, my ability to be selfless. I say when you are intentionally selfish, you're literally creating the spaciousness so you can do the work you need to do for yourself, your self-forgiveness work, your personal transformation. You're letting go of those outdated expectations that you have, whatever it is. Maybe it's just some more sleep or some more sex or some more me time. You having that spaciousness to do it allows you to show up fully as a selfless, altruistic, philanthropic person without resentment. Right? Because a lot of us, if we're honest with ourselves, we know, because I definitely walked in it, we'll be so focused in glamorizing the gift, making sure it's packaged just right, making sure it's the biggest gift, the wow gift that the person receives, that we're doing all of that almost in a way, for a reverse reason of feeling guilty for not being able to spend the time with them or not being able to really appreciate being in the presence. Because you're like, listen, Lisa is an amazing person, but her energy is too high. Let me give her a gift and skip the party, right? Like
that.
And nothing. And actually, that's a good point, Theresa. I encourage it. Like, if you know that you can only take doses of a family member or family members or friends or even colleagues, and you're like, I'm all about the high energy or the low energy or whatever their energy is that's different than yours.
Right.
And you could do it, but you're like, I have a 2-hour window, and I know every time I go, I can't get out, before 4.5 hours.
Right.
So now I'm pissed by the time that I leave. That's not somewhere you want to keep subjecting yourself, because you're holding yourself to an expectation. I'm pointing myself as first partaker, because I used to do the same thing, where you feel like you have to go. How about do it differently? Let me send you a phenomenal gift that I actually, because I'm your friend or your colleague or whatever, and I was listening to what makes sense for you, because every time I'm in your presence, I'm fully present with you. So I heard you say, I'm allergic to chocolate, but I love peppermint. I heard you say that you're a plant mom or dad. I heard you say that you have a new dog. So when I do a gift, it's not for the wow factor anymore. It's not because I feel guilty about not coming to wherever that thing is that you invited me. It's really because I want to show my appreciation and my love for you. And I want to honor my boundaries. I want to honor the fact that, Lisa's a lot. And I don't want Lisa to dim, and I don't want to dim for Lisa.
Right. So you still want to honor Lisa, just in a different way in
a different way that matches me. So I don't find myself in a friendship or relationship of any kind 5 years from now resenting the fact that I allowed Lisa to take up space, because now I'm in a space because I wasn't intentionally selfish. I wasn't making room for myself. I wasn't doing my own work because I never had time. I was always booked and busy. We know that word, right? And because that was my life, now deeper into the years of the relationship, I'm looking at Lisa sideways and I'm not answering her calls. And I'm doing those slow, passive aggressive things that we all typically do when we know there wasn't an incident that caused anything, but we're feeling like that's not our person anymore. Those are not our people. And we're just slowly pulling away instead of honoring, that's not my person, that's not my people, and having the courage, because I have the room to do the work, to build up the courage, to say, Lisa, you are phenomenal. I'm going to check you next year at the annual gala, versus, oh yeah, girl, I'll be there next month. No, you won't. You don't want to be. You don't want to go there. So I had to do a lot of that work. And there is no person named Lisa for everyone who's thinking about this. I just use that name a lot. I say Lisa and Tiffany a lot, and there's no one in my life with those names. So don't worry. No one that's close to me. But when you are able to do that work for yourself, you really can be a fuller, more honest version of yourself. And I had to do it first. I had to use my acumen as a business advisor, as a balance and relationship advisor, as a licensed therapist and trauma specialist, and get out of my own way, break free from my own expectations, sign up for therapy again, right? Because we've all, well, maybe not all, but many of us have gone through it and thought that 15 years ago, that was enough. 10 years ago, that was enough. That one time I tried EFT, that was enough, when it's not. You need more of it.
It's not? Deeper. What? Huh? No.
Girl, listen.
I was thinking I was all set. No.
After that one session, or maybe that year of sessions, at that point in my lifespan, where now I'm a completely other human. I've evolved with more stories, more heartbreak, more challenges.
We outgrow Lisa and we outgrow therapy.
Exactly. In a different way. So for me, that's really what it was.
Lisa benefits when we move on, just like we do. And so does the old therapist, the new therapist, everybody. There's a place for everybody and a time for everyone.
Yes.
So, were there specific ways that you felt there were different expectations that were put on you before in your life that are not there now?
Oh, yes. And most of them were honestly mine. Now, of course, I could lean into, I had family expecting me to come to all the things. They wanted to see me, which I appreciate being wanted, right? I appreciate you wanting me to come to your showers, your wedding parties, your rehearsals, your barbecues, your anniversaries. I appreciate the invite.
Yeah.
On the other side of it, they weren't necessarily, and I say family, but I'm encompassing everyone who's familial in my life. There was also this expectation that because I work for myself, and my husband and I own the company for literally, at the time of this recording, tomorrow will be 11 official years. Thank you. But with it, people just, they place things on your time. Like, we say things like, oh, they're in your pocket. I didn't necessarily have that situation where people were clocking what they thought was money. It was more of time. Oh, Naketa's home, she could watch the kids. Oh, Naketa's home, she could dog set. Oh, Naketa's home, she could, go and run and do that thing for you because you forgot to do something in preparation for that party. And Naketa has always been the child that was like, no, I'm not doing that. My kids think no is my favorite word, and it's not. Boundaries.
I like it a lot. I like no a lot.
I do too. I do too.
It's my second. On me a lot.
Right. It's my second favorite word. But boundaries is really my first, because for me, and you and I have talked about this in many other conversations, for me to create balance for myself, the same thing that I teach my clients, it's admitting the truth of what I really want in my life for me as who I'm becoming, and creating those boundaries so I can achieve that truth as my reality. I can't do that if my time is everyone else's. If I feel like this feels a little strong, but a proverbial breastfeeding of all the other people in my life, and I have no time to hydrate, and I don't have time to give myself the nutrition so I could store up. And even when, because for a lot of us, ambitious humans, male or female, many of us feel like, oh, but I want to breastfeed, I want to nurture, I want to support. I do too, but not at the risk of my health, not at the risk of my mental health, not
or
at the
you
risk
feeling nurtured yourself.
Exactly. And I don't want my husband to be like, okay, so you out here being amazing for everyone else. I haven't seen you in X number of weeks, because even though you're here, you're not here. Right. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want that to be an ongoing. We had those moments. Don't let me lie. That's definitely
a struggle for anybody that works from home or with a spouse or for themselves.
Absolutely. And I had to be honest about what I wanted it to be versus what it was, because the reality was not in alignment with where I knew we were meant to be. And for me, that meant I had to back all the way up, be more intentionally selfish, look at what I was creating, because I do believe we create our own realities.
Yes.
And I had to look at that like, okay, something is out of alignment. Yeah, business is great. You're helping all these couples do all this great stuff. You're helping these women entrepreneurs do this great stuff. When's the last time you took a pee break, Naketa? Right? Like, when's the last time you put your feet up and wiggled your toes? I had to be honest with myself with what was happening that was out of alignment before I started my company, when I was a clinician and a trauma specialist and was barely getting 3 hours of sleep. And my kids were amazing, but they were definitely being more nurtured by my husband than me because I had no space for it, versus when I started to make the space for myself and I was like, okay, I'm not available on Fridays, 6-week self-lovecation. This is for me, not because I don't love you and all the people in my life, but because I want to love you authentically and honestly, and not do it while I'm processing recipes. What else do I need to order? Who else did I not call in my head? Right. I wanted to be fully present.
That's a lot. So when you were in that stage of realizing like you wanted to have more time with your husband, or that you weren't being present or whatever, did it come up for you that like maybe you were avoiding something? Like, is there like a process of working through things there for you?
Yeah, mama. I had a lot. So, full transparency always, that's always what you're going to get from me in every conversation on or off air. As someone who was a significant survivor of a lot of multi-macro traumas, from sexual abuse, physical abuse, you name it, I went through it growing up. My household was not safe. There were not loving affirmations poured into me of how great I would be. It was, you're going to be a whore like your mother. You're stupid. Those were daily thoughts and words that were literally shared with me ongoing. And I had to be resilient and take the little tiny specks of goodness that was around me, from the neighbor up the street that offered me a hot dog, or the woman who was just had kind eyes that I never met and never really knew her name, but she just gave me gentleness, which is what I was, needing and craving at the time. I had to literally piecemeal a version of safety for myself that I could grow into, because the through that I was in was a hot mess. So you're talking to a woman who definitely had a lot of damage and a lot of broken stuff that came up in different parts of my life, right? When I was younger, I had no idea why I was hot in the pants. I've been with my husband since we were 17, so we were hot in pants together. But while I'm like doing all these things and being all free, certain things didn't hit me until I had a baby. And then I had a baby, and it triggered another layer of trauma for me that I had to go to therapy for 3 years for. Like, where is this coming from? Where is this anxiousness? Why am I afraid to give him a bath without thinking I'm gonna drown him? Like, what is happening? Like, I knew that there were things wrong. And then as I went through another life cycle, and I had my triple degree, and I have my master's, and I have my license, and we're in this other space of life, and I'm like, oh God, I didn't do enough. Like, what's happening with my time? Imposter syndrome was crippling for me to the point that I was hiding my achievements. So I went through a lot of these layers, and I attracted solutions. I attracted coaches and advisors and people like you in my life who were EFT specialists that could help me see there were other modalities of healing besides what I knew about from going to the doctor and getting a prescription, or even just going to therapy, which is, both are great if they help you, but individually by themselves, they may not be the cocktail of remedy that you need. And this girl had a lot going on. Yeah. So I was like, throw me the remedy. And I'm a homeopath, so I was very averse to allopathic medication. I just wanted to do the deeper healing work, which I was also petrified of doing at the same time. But doing it allowed me to be in a space with you. And I'll just use this as a recent example, where you did an EFT session with me. Thank you for that, by the way. My pleasure. And I was able to feel it all the way through, to go from that 7.5 that I was at straight down to a 0. And I could own it because I had did so much work, and I understood that it wasn't in the one thing that was just going to heal me. There were steps and moments and patient milestones that I had to receive, and be kind enough to myself to receive it. Because I truly do feel like a lot of the challenges that we have, we created by being unkind to ourselves. Like, you're not worthy of this. This isn't going to work for you. What are you talking about? You don't need that. Like, the little subconscious thoughts that we have come up. And I had to be the warrior for myself and make sure that the inner child felt safe enough to let go some of those scripts and imprints, and allow the adults to merge and flourish, and know that I am human and imperfect. So there's going to be other storms that come along and uproot something I didn't know was there. And so I have people like you in my life say, oh, what's this resistance to change that you're having? Naketa, okay, come on. And I have to be humble enough to say, you're right. This is, with all my accolades and all my degrees and all my certifications, I'm going through this. I have to be honest. Otherwise, I can't get the help. And I won't be successful at bringing anything down to a 5 or 4 or 2 or a 0 if I'm not willing to allow myself to be a student of the healing process as much as I'm an advisor in it at the same time.
Helpers need help, coaches need coaches, all that kind of stuff. And for sure, that being humble enough to be able to do that's huge. I know. I struggled with it for a while too. Kind of like, I know better, so I should be able to do better, like on my own. But we all need each other. That's why we're all here. Yes, we do. It's part of the human experience. And there's so much about your story that you just touched on that we've not like talked about before. And I'm feeling like, I'm missing out on stuff. Like when people share about their past, I'm never really sure. I'm curious what your opinion is on this. How do you want people to respond to that? Like, I'm never really sure, like, I'm so sorry that happened. Or if I'm just be like, wow, Naketa, like, because of where you are right now, I'm so glad you went through all that. Like, because like, I'm never really sure, but I'm curious, like, from your standpoint, like, what would feel good to you? Like, how would it feel? What would feel good to be responded to with that? Like,
no one's ever asked me this question before. So this is a whoa moment for me that I'm having internally. I can definitely lean in to, law of negativity, bias. The first thing I think of is what I don't want to happen, right? I don't want pity ever. Pity, it's no longer a trigger because I've worked through that, thank God, but it used to be a trigger for me. Right. If someone would go from, I don't know, this might be strong, but to be amazed right before I got to that point and to be like, oh goodness, wow, I'm so sorry, right? Like, you know what I mean? And then to be like overwhelming, like, oh, I'm so sorry. And to keep, it almost makes you feel like you are helpless again when someone says that. And there was definitely a space in my life as a young child who was victimized before I was 5 years old, ongoing up until I was 13 and a half, that is a horrible place to be projected back into, no matter how much work you've done, to feel a form of helplessness.
Right.
So for me, my default when I used to be triggered by that word, which I'm not anymore, was to go into my default is survivor. And survivor for me was literally physically fighting. So there was a huge urge to, alpha female up in the most primal way possible. And you'll see it on my face. I am a Black woman, so I am super expressive and I own that completely. And I'll go from my default of normally smiling to like, please, I don't need that, right? Like everything shifts for me, and it's not a good shift in energy. Because I've done the work around pity and what that brought up for me, and the fact that it was linked with helplessness because I didn't understand that, which is why it was a trigger at the time. I get now that some people are just so uncomfortable with what you just gave them because, one, it could be triggering them. Two, they could just feel so removed from it that they literally don't know what to do except say, I'm so sorry. And they become almost infantile in that. And whenever you, who's the survivor of a thing, have to flip into now consoling someone else because they are deeply impacted by your trauma, it's almost a betrayal, right? Like you feel like they're taking something from you that you did not offer. It's not consensual. And now you feel double victimized because in addition to that moment that you feel like it's being stripped from you, depending on the personality you are, and I'm a helper, that is my core, I almost feel like I have to, like I'm not doing a service as a human put on this earth, but to make sure that you're okay. Like, oh, I don't want you to walk away from this, having a whole traumatic experience. So now I'm doing more work. So I leave our exchange not feeling held and safe in the strength of my vulnerability. I feel exhausted by the fact that I just had to do that. I was, you know what I mean? And I was walking backwards from your very, very powerful question. So looking at it from the other side of like, well, Naketa, what do you want? I think I just want to be acknowledged and to keep it moving. Like, okay, oh, wow. All right. So and like just leaning, not in a
that wouldn't feel like
way.
I just like glossed over all that you just shared.
No, not at all. Not especially if well, first of all,
that's what I worry about when I do kind of do that, that people either think I'm being insensitive or not paying enough attention to things or whatever. But when I do offer and I'm sorry, it's not from a place of pity.
Right.
It's a compassionate, I don't know. It just,
and I think there's a difference, Theresa, and this, it's because I've been around you enough to see what your intention is in many things. And I'm sorry that happened to you, and moving on is very different than holding it and wanting to drill down like, oh, well, what was that like? Well, who was around? Because people will go deep, almost in a fetishizing kind of way. Yeah. And of course, you have your boundaries, you put it up because you're not trying to relive anything to make them feel comfortable or for them to find the relatability in it, because that's a whole nother conversation, right? So saying I'm sorry is never the problem. It's when people really want to hold you in that space. They're almost wanting to relive it with you so they can go through some version of it in a very perverted way in some ways. And then they release themselves when they're comfortable, and now you're left with all of it all over again. But no, it's not dismissive at all if you say something like, oh, I'm sorry that happened. So you've been through a lot and here you are today. That's not dismissive at all. And you do that well, by the way.
Oh, well, thanks. And when I offer an apology, it's more like directed towards that inner child and that previous version of you that, went through all that in that time. So what do you think was different about your life from like your mom's or these multi-generational patterns that you were able to step away from? Like, what do you think made that different? Because so many people just get stuck in those patterns and would have just repeated everything and not had that spark or that ability to step away from it or to even look at it in a different perspective. Like, what do you think was different for you?
There was two real things that I can truly like pinpoint. I think that's the right phrase that I can pinpoint. The one is I focused on the positive. It's hilarious. We're a very sarcastic, silly family. But one of the things that my husband and my kids that are 25 and a half and 21 and a half
Yeah.
always tell me forever is, you are so optimistic. And I am. One, because that was also part of the survivor. As much as I was the little girl that would absolutely throw hands in the middle of the street to protect myself and to protect someone else that was being bullied, not even knowing who that other kid is, like, this is out of alignment. Let me jump in and help the smaller kid or the kid that's being jumped on.
Right.
That kid also, we got a visitor. That kid also, it was the kid that was always looking for the lining, right? Like, what's positive in this? Okay, there's a lot of horrible that's happening in my house. But the other thing that I learned was, you know what? I know how to clean a bathroom really well because my grandmother's OCD forced me to get into crevices and understand that it's not good enough to do a quick wipe. Like, there were just small little pockets of things that I leaned on. I was able to really focus on, nope, that neighbor never rescued me, even though they might have heard things that were happening. And, you know, our alarm clock growing up in our house was my step grandfather throwing my grandmother against the wall. Like, we woke up to physical violence, not to mention all the other nighttime horrific things that were happening. But that neighbor that just looked at me and was like, you know, so-and-so, one of my children is having a birthday party. Do you want to come? And I'm not even friends with that person. I'm like, okay, right? Just those small pockets of safety that I could lean on. The first mentor that I ever had when I was a young mom at 19, welcoming me into her office practice. She was a PsyD, a clinical psychologist. And she was like, you know, you could totally file things for me if you want to make $15 an hour, which was unheard of back then. That was like $50 an hour. And I'm like,
plenty of people are struggling to make that now.
Exactly. And that was a super big deal. Because I think, I don't know, minimum wage was like $5 and something. And I had 3 of those minimum wage jobs. So for her to give me this opportunity, I would love to say that I let go of the 3, but I've always been ambitious. So it was now a 4th good one that I could add to all of it. But I was always focused on that, those good, positive possibilities. I won't say outcomes because it wasn't always like a through line, but just those good moments really held me in a space where I could focus on that versus all of the torment that was happening. Yeah. And the second thing I will honestly say is the very first time I allowed myself to be selfish. And I recognized it in the time, and I had a huge amount of guilt and shame over it, but it legitimately saved my life. Was when I was 15 years old. I had moved back in with my mother, who had abandoned me at 9 and left me with a pedophile that was also her pedophile when she was growing up. Wow. I had moved back with her when I was about 12 and a half, when she had my brother. I'm the oldest of 5, but my youngest is 12 and a half years younger than me. And I did it for him specifically. But by the time I was 15, and she was a madam and had all kinds of traffic in her house, and she got to the point in her drug abuse that she literally was offering me for services, I knew I had to leave. And I knew I was 15. And I had multiple jobs, but I was in high school, and my high school we were living in South Philly. My high school was all the way in Chestnut Hill, which, for those of you who don't know, is well over an hour and a half of multiple bus rides away. I had to make a decision to leave him. And that was the most difficult choice that I've ever had to make in my life. But I knew I had to save me in order to be in a position to come and get him later, which I was able to do by the time he was 13. But that was really tough, but it was also what helped me not fall in the trap, because I know if I had stayed there, I would either be under the jail, I would be dead, or I would still be an ambitious, amazing woman on the dark side of things. And I would probably own like a suite of strip clubs with some deep champagne room stuff happening in the background, because I was always entrepreneurial.
Yes. That's true. There's so many ways that can go, aren't there?
So many ways, right?
Well, I'm proud of the way that you've spun it all. So that's pretty awesome. And gosh, there's so much there. And I know you do so much work around intimacy, and I can only imagine how difficult being able to be someone who can be as vulnerable and intimate and good at sharing as you has been to become.
Yeah.
That has to have been like such a journey.
But it was.
You've obviously walked the walk. So, I mean, when people are struggling with the being selfish for their best interests or struggling with all of this, I know that you can definitely help them through that, because you've definitely struggled at the like deepest and darkest levels with this stuff.
Absolutely. And it's also why I don't get offended, right? When people are like, oh, I'd never say I'm selfish, right? Like, because I hear it all the time. And sometimes, depending on my energy, depending on the platform that I have, I'll give the background context of where the word selfish came from, how it was literally meant to keep women as chattel, as wives that were considered selfish if they didn't just have sex with their husbands whenever. Rape wasn't even considered rape for people who were married until the early 90s in some states. Like, just all the things of why that word even got into our lexicon, and we hold each other down with it to this day. Sometimes I'll go into the history because you know me personally and know that I'm a nerd for life. So I'm okay with having that. But there has to be an energy of acceptance, right? Like, if the other person or people that I'm in front of clearly don't have that energy to hold space for the growth possibility of, you don't have to agree with it, but just to understand that there's a reason why I took that word specifically and redefined it.
Yes.
That's okay. But I don't get offended. I'm just like, they're not ready yet. Maybe they will be, maybe they won't. But I did my job by honoring and showing up as who I am. And I just leave it there because of all the work that I've done.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I know that your belief is that when couples, lovers are intentionally selfish, that's what leads to them being like together forever and really feeling good and peaceful and awesome in their relationship. So are there any good tips you can share with us for either like that intentional selfishness within a relationship or better ways to connect, that sort of thing?
Yeah. Thank you for asking that. So I would say the first big way to be, and it's big, but you can take micro steps obviously to get there. So no judgment for anyone who's not quite ready to embrace this tip. The big thing to consider that can shift your entire intimate relationship with your forever lover partner is to recognize that you don't need him or her. You don't need that person, but if you want them, it makes all the difference. It's an immediate shift to let go of needing. And you guys know what I mean when I say, like, people think it's cute. Like, I need him. He's my other half. Listen, my husband is my soul's half. I believe he was created for me and I was created for him, but he does not complete me. I believe he complements me and elevates me in ways that probably no other human could ever do, because he can deal with my crazy and all the special pieces of me, but he also just gets me. He understands me non-verbally, and I'm a pretty verbal person, as I'm sure by this point, most people are thinking. With that said, when I transitioned, because again, we were friends since 13, together since 17, when we transitioned out of that puppy love phase and really went through some big grown adult issues, and I had to look at like what was out of alignment, part of it is I didn't believe that I could be who I was without him. And vice versa. He dealt with his own version of that. And we had to have what I call come to Jesus conversations about how that wasn't working for us, how that was out of alignment. And it was as if chains were literally broken from us visually, like in a real sense of this time and space, when we were like, we don't need each other, but I do want you. I want you in my life. I want to be intimate with you. I want to talk to you. I want to have conversation with you versus feeling the heaviness of needing to share things, because what that looks like is a business partnership. That's not what I want. I don't want a roommate. I don't want to be always passing ships. That happens sometimes with life, and especially as entrepreneurs. I don't want that to be our rule, our ongoing reality, even though it might be an exception. And I definitely don't want to feel like I don't want to come in the house. I don't want to sit in my driveway for 45 minutes trying to muster up the energy to come into your energy. That's the worst, right? And part of that is sometimes, and I'm not talking about people who are dealing with extreme issues like domestic or intimate partner violence, or any of this. I'm not even talking about that level. I'm just talking about the quote unquote stable relationship that isn't as healthy as it could be. And we definitely went through that. And to get to the other side, I had to reclaim my power. And part of that was not giving any of it to him. And again, vice versa, because this isn't a man bashing for those of you who are in heterosexual relationships. It's not about that. It's about you knowing what you gave away because it was cute. It was cute at some point in your relationship. Be like, right? You know, it was so cute until you grew up in the
like the Betty
relationship.
Boop image in my head.
I love Betty Boop, by the way. The red kisses and all of it. Don't get me started. Um,
but she gave away a lot of power.
She did give away a lot of power, right?
Cute, and but powerless.
Cute, but not cute. Exactly. And, you know, being able to be like, okay, I did that. I'm over it. I've evolved from it. And that's the biggest, hugest way to start moving towards a intentionally selfish version of yourself that can be healthy and whole. And now you can enjoy each other in a whole nother way, because you know you get to be dope and amazing, incredible, and wildly successful. And so does your partner. And you're no longer clashing with each other.
That's huge. That's huge. Just the shift from need to want. I think that's one of those like super obvious things that we forget.
Yeah. Yeah, because we were stuck in cute. I know I was for years. It's cute. Yeah,
absolutely. And where do you think that the real peace comes from? Like the peace that you get from doing all that?
Yeah. For me personally, as well as for what I teach my clients, the peace in all of it is knowing that you have your own assignment on this planet, that you get to, and hopefully, prayerfully, your person lives with you forever. Like you guys die of old age in bed together, sleep, hug, you know, cuddling, but that's not all of our journeys and our realities. One of you may go before the other. One of you may go way earlier into another time. And I don't mean death. I mean, just they transitioned into another relationship and you transitioned, right? Like there are people who are listening to this that have
only constant is change.
And right. That's the one thing we can depend on. And honoring that while you're with this person, while you're committed, hopefully committed to being in a monogamous relationship with this person you deem as your forever lover in this dimension, time, and space, owning your ability to still have a path that is yours. That yes, you share joy, you share pain, you share triumph and tribulation, but your path is still your path, and not feeling like the people of old time. And I'm being very gentle with this because I know there are many people our age that have parents that they've seen do this, where the husband or the wife literally sacrifice all of their dreams so that the other one could be lifted up. And many of them did that only to be betrayed by their partner, because now that partner doesn't respect them at the same. When I met you, you were vivacious and you were on it, and you know, you were a go-getter. And then at some point you put me up on a pedestal, which felt really good at the time. But once I got there and saw other ambitious people, and that curvy woman was also ambitious, some reason I was attracted to her, and I started to not come home to my forever lover, right? Because I just also feel like you'll just be there because what else do you have to do?
This is a story I recognize in my family tree.
Right. Same. And that I've seen those scripts imprinted in couples that I've worked with that are successful and doing well and all the things. And those scripts come up when they realize, wait a minute, this is why I never started the merchandising product. This is why I only worked, 1 to 4 to allow my forever lover to do X, Y, and Z. And they get to travel and they get to, be on yachts and do all the things. And I'm just here holding it down. And meanwhile, there's resentment that's building up. And when you have resentment in any relationship, your sibling relationships, your parenting child relationships in either direction, as well as with your forever lover, it literally is like an inner poison, a toxin that is destroying you from the inside out. But you can't put your finger on it because it's been a slow brew, like carbon monoxide in the air. It's been a slow brew. And one day you look up and you're trying to figure out why you're looking at this person with your lip twisted up, mad that they even woke up, not because you're wishing death on them, but just irritated at the way they breathe, irritated at the way they talk. They move the pancakes over to the left side of the plate and that just pissed you off. And you're not really sure why. It's because that inner resentment has been building up and it literally is suffocating your peace. And in order to get that back, you have to reclaim your assignment. And it's okay. if you don't know what it is in this hour, because you're like, well, I had this career, that career, and I thought that was it, but now I feel called to something else and I don't know what it is.
Oh, I got some people to send this recording to.
Woo, you know what I'm saying? And it's okay. And I think that's the first thing that people that are, I'll just say, above 30, if you're older than 30 years old, regardless of how many decades removed from that you are, reminding yourself that play is the best way for you to live. When you play with those passions, it's like chipping away through that chaos and all that calcification of how that resentment builds up, or maybe guilt or shame or anger or rage, whatever that was that built up. You get to chip away at it when you play. So go play with painting, go play with designing that shoe design that you had at 7 that you thought was corny, but you've probably seen 20 iterations of as an adult, right?
Oh my goodness, that's too funny. I actually used to want to be a fashion designer. I still have my book of designs in the basement from when I was like in early elementary school. Maybe it's time to dig it up. I don't know.
Listen, yes, there's a reason that I use that example. Like I literally just pulled out of the ether.
There's nobody that wants to see that on the runway.
We've seen some stuff now where we'd be like, where, how?
Maybe it's better than I remember.
Exactly.
But yeah, you're absolutely right. I can think of the people that I know that come across as the most resentful in their relationships or what have you, and they definitely are not playing with each other or much at all in life. Yeah. And that's a really cool way to cut through it. That's for sure. I was going to ask you like what the best way in your opinion to get through it is, but you got that. And that's so cool. Guys, if you are enjoying this as much as I am and you want some more of Naketa, you can find her podcast, which is called the Balance Boldly podcast, otherwise known as the BDP, which I got to say, like with your Philly background, every time I hear you refer to it that way, I go back like Motown Philly, like, boys to men, ABC, BBD. And I'm like,
yes. I'm about that.
I'm all like Belle Biv DeVoe on the BDP.
I'm for it all day because I love them. So
anyway, check out the BDP. And Naketa, where else can people find you and all your goodness?
I would say the second best place is to come over to LinkedIn, have conversations, send me a direct message so we can potentially have a virtual tea chat together. I love tea, as Theresa knows. Pun intended there. I love tea and I love Theresa. So
that is my nickname. I don't know if you're aware of that, but that's my family nickname.
It was not. So yes, for all the reasons, for all of that alignment, just in that sentence, come and have tea with me. Reach out on LinkedIn. Of course, you can go to thigpro.com, but I would just encourage you to come over to LinkedIn and let's get intimate. Pun very much intended.
My phone only goes off when there's like the school calling, which means I probably need to go figure out what's going on with my kids. But I'm sorry, that's the second time that interruption was there. And I know you were like, I have a visitor at one point. You got a dog running around your feet. This is just real life, people. That's all. Like, and I know there's a couple times my dog was thumping at the door out there. So just, hey, we're just two girls here talking and living life. But I'm so appreciative that you were here today, Naketa, and that you shared so much awesome stuff with us and so many really useful tips that people can actually like actionably use and transform their lives with. And just thank you so very much.
Oh, thank you. I honor you for this space and this time. I'm going to let you go handle whatever needs to be handled. And I look forward to our next conversation.
Absolutely. Thanks again. Thanks so much for listening. If you loved this episode, please share it with a friend or post on social media and tag me so I can personally connect and thank you. Until next time, keep taking bold and brave action steps towards becoming more of who you want to be in this world. You are capable, you are worthy, and you are enough. Keep shining your light.